International Fight Week UFC is coming up soon, and guys, the card is already looking amazing. Dana White said that they are planning on doing Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic for the heavyweight title, with the co-main event Alexander Volkanovski versus Yair Rodriguez. We are going to talk about that entire card, and we are going to build a fantasy card. What if I was in control? What if I could make a fight week card that is reasonable and we could actually see happen one day? So I wanted to make this card as realistic as possible. I wrote down all of the fights. We're going to go into detail with each fight, why I chose it, and we're going to build the card from bottom to top. Guys, let me know what you think about all of this afterwards. Thank you for clicking on the video advance. Let's talk about UFC International Fight Week. What would be the best card the UFC could make? So I have, like I said, all of the fights written down here, and the biggest thing for International Fight Week, because it's a whole event, right? International Fight Week, it's a thing where people travel down, they get to meet the fighters, they get to do all of these events. It's just a really, really big card for the UFC. We know 2 fights on it already, like I said, but they're not confirmed yet. It's just what Dana White is planning on doing. So what's the biggest thing that they could do for International Fight Week? Of course, they can put on an amazing card. That's what they do, right? They put on some ridiculously insane cards, and perhaps the fights that I chose, maybe they're a little bit better than what we are actually going to bet. Actually, you know what? They are better than what we were actually going to get. But still, the biggest thing that I was trying to think about, like, what they could possibly do to make the card better than what they've already done. And I thought of something interesting. Every once in a while, we'll get a 6-fight main card. And that actually adds to the card a lot. I really, really enjoy UFC cards with a 6-fight card main event. Or excuse me, a 6-fight main card. Why not do that for International Fight Week, but put 6 fights on every single part of the card? 6 fights on the main card, 6 fights on the prelims, 6 fights on the early prelims. Get some people, get them incentivized to buy Fight Pass. Why not? If you're going to do this at some point, why not International Fight Week? Make it a special occasion. Hey, we're having a mega UFC day. We are adding fights onto the card. So instead of 1.5 hours, 2 hours, and then the main card, 3 hours, just make it 3 hours for each. Make it start a little bit in the afternoon. Make people put it all away and have this magnificent event for UFC Fight Week. You could even have like a TV show in the morning. You could have all of these super, like, really cool events going on. I think it'd be really cool. So for this card, I put 6 fights on the early prelims, the prelims, and the main card. We are going to get into all of those fights one by one right now. Opening up the card, we have Ryan Hall, the return of Ryan Hall versus the return of Chase Hooper, who hasn't been gone for so long. I really like this fight, okay? The reason that I chose this fight is because Ryan Hall, a lot of hardcore MMA fans actually really like watching Ryan Hall. However, him and Chase Hooper both don't have the name value to be put a little bit higher on the card. But I actually like this matchup. It makes sense for the division. Ryan Hall's coming back, coming off of a good win, and Chase Hooper has been struggling in his career. But when taking a look at, like, right outside the rankings, I feel like this fight actually makes sense. And I would absolutely love to see the grappling exchanges here, because I believe Chase Hooper wouldn't have a problem grappling with Ryan Hall. And they both have, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but they both kind of seem to have subpar striking. But it would make for an interesting matchup, especially because I can see Chase Hooper been competing in Fury. It's been an absolute thrill to watch him. Same with Ryan Hall whenever he is in a fight. I would love to see these two go at it on the ground. And it'll be a perfect opening for the early prelims. Who would win this fight? I don't know. I would go with Ryan Hall, but he is getting older and had yet another surgery. So that's a toughie. Let me know, by the way, guys, let me know who you would pick to win in each fight, because we're just making this for fun. We're talking about potential matchups. This is something that I really wanted to do for a long time. So that's the first fight on the card, Ryan Hall versus Chase Hooper. Moving on to the next fight, we have Tabitha Ricci versus Yasmin Yorigui, and I apologize, I probably pronounced that last name wrong, but 2 fighters that honestly, when I was taking a look at this card, and you want to take a look at the promotion for this card too, like everything, they're going to have fan meetings, they're going to have trailers, they're going to have events where you could just go watch fighters work out. Why not choose the women's fighters that are easy on the eyes? And Tabitha Ricci and both Yasmin Yorigui are actually, don't get me wrong, they're fantastic fighters, but very, very promotable in that sense, because you always know the MMA meme community goes absolutely insane when somebody like Mackenzie Dern's fighting. So these two would be really well on the card. Plus, it's a nice fight for the, like, a little bit of the edge of the rankings, kind of where Tabitha Ricci is. If I had to guess, I haven't seen enough of Yasmin yet to determine how good she would fight against somebody like Tabitha Ricci, who is a little bit more well-established in the division. However, I do think Ricci would take the win in this fight, but it would be a fun fight in the women's division. Moving on to the next fight, guys, and this is just asking for fireworks. We have Gregory Rodriguez versus Joaquin Buckley. I actually went back and looked at the records because I was quite surprised that their paths haven't crossed yet, because they seem to be kind of in the same spot in the middleweight division. And honestly, for both guys, I can see this being really like how they actually get matched up with to each other. This fight would be asking for a knockout. Gregory Rodriguez, no matter what, is always storming in, looking to throw down, and Joaquin Buckley can meet him with that insane power. Somebody's going to get finished. If I had to guess, I'd pick Rodriguez to win, but still, you can never count out a guy like Joaquin Buckley. That fight would be absolutely amazing. Still in the early prelims, moving up, we have Jack Della Maddalena fighting against the return of Kevin Lee. I thought it was a good spot to bring Kevin Lee back because Kevin Lee, don't get me wrong, like, people really like watching him, and something that I will talk about is the potential for this press conference, okay? It is amazing, the potential for this press conference, but again, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Kevin Lee, always great on the mic. It's really exciting to have him back. Plus, he always has fantastic fights, and why not throw him instead of having a top contender? He is coming back at 170. He specified that. Why not throw him against Jack Della Maddalena? And Jack Della Maddalena, I understand, he's looked fantastic. If I had to guess, he would steamroll Kevin Lee. I'm really high on this guy. But I think it's better to have Kevin Lee fight somebody who is at the position that Jack Della Maddalena is, instead of throwing him right into the Leon Edwards or throwing him right into the Colby Covingtons right at the top of the division. You know what I mean? It's a good step to see where Kevin Lee fits into the division. Memes aside, that just came off the top of my head. Where does Kevin Lee fit into all of this? But I think this is a great matchup and a great return for Kevin Lee. Moving on to the next fight, Marvin Vettori versus Dricus du Plessis, and this makes total sense in the division. Marvin Vettori, honestly, I kind of wanted Marvin just on this card because of the fighters that are going to be on this card, and him at a press conference is really fun. We love Angry Marvin, as Uncle Chael would say, you know what I mean? But in all honesty, it makes sense in the division. Dricus du Plessis and Marvin Vettori, this is probably the fight that is actually going to be made next for both of them. Why not have them on International Fight Week? They are very promotable. This is asking for fireworks because both guys don't really knock people out, but at the same time, they're willing to stand there and trade. I am so down to see this. If I had to guess, who would win this fight? I'd go with Marvin Vettori, but just because I'm not convinced of Dricus du Plessis yet. I don't know where his skills will match up against Vettori, but Vettori, very established in the division. Didn't look good in his last few fights, except for the Paulo Costa one. So it's going to be interesting, for sure. I'm acting like this fight's already happening, but still, I believe this fight is actually going to get made, like all this video aside. Moving on to the next fight, ending off the early prelims, we have Jim Miller versus the return of Joe Lauzon. Joe Lauzon, you remember, he wanted to have one more fight at least, and it seemed like, I don't believe he said specifically, but it seemed like he was going to have one more fight and retire. For those of you who don't know, Joe Lauzon is not retired. He still wants to fight. He just had his last fight canceled last minute. Jim Miller versus Joe Lauzon 3. They had two fights that were absolutely spectacular. Why not let Joe Lauzon go out with another legend? That was something awesome that we've seen with some fighters do, with like when they bang it out, kind of like Tony Ferguson and Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz went out fighting another legend instead of Khamzat Chimaev. It was really cool to see. So why not have Jim Miller and Joe Lauzon go at it again? Joe Lauzon's last fight, have it on an International Fight Week card. I know Joe Lauzon doesn't have name value to this day, but he always puts on amazing fights, and it would be a really good goodbye to his career to put him against another legend in Jim Miller. Jim Miller would probably wipe the floor with him. I believe Joe Lauzon's done, but still, this is an amazing fight. They had two other fantastic fights. One of my favorite memories is watching their second fight together, and the first fight, you know what I mean? But still, it's great, and I would really like to have one of my favorite fighters go out on a huge card like this against another legend like Jim Miller. Let's move on to the prelims, though. That was just the early prelims. Let's move on to the prelims. What have we chose for the prelims? The first fight opening the prelims is Nate the Train Landwehr coming back. He didn't take too much damage versus Do Ho Choi. Both fighters look like they are on a little bit of a collision course, and I almost put Nate Landwehr versus Dan Ige because those two want to fight each other. However, I thought it'd be really fun to have a representative from South Korea on the card because Do-ho, is a fantastic name overseas, and Nate Landwehr is really gaining some steam. Nate the Train's gaining some steam in the West over here, so I feel like that'd be a really good fight, and these two would sit there and they would throw down. It wouldn't be brawling, but it would be like technical brawling at such a high pace. These two have a recipe for excitement. I would love to see this fight next in the division. I am huge fans of both guys, so maybe I wouldn't want to see this fight too much because I would be cheering for both guys. Maybe I'd cheer for Do-ho a little bit more, but still, great fight. Nate the Train versus Do-ho Choi. I would pick Nate Landwehr to outwork him a little bit, but still, we don't know that for sure, right? He's a little bit stepping up in competition with Nate the Train for this one, but it's a very interesting fight, and I would love to see it. Moving on to the next fight, we have to throw another women's fight on the card here. We have Amanda Ribas versus Poliana Viana. Two women's MMA fighters that are gaining a lot of traction in the MMA world with the communities here. A lot of people like Amanda Ribas. She's becoming quite the fan favorite. And Poliana Viana, people, don't get me wrong, she has great skills, but people absolutely love to look at her, okay? These two are very promotable, and for an International Fight Week card, they would bring in a whole wave of fans to go and meet them. If you're going to do some events at Fight Week, like throughout the entire week, the press conference, people like to see him, people would like to see interviews. They could sell this card very well. Amanda Ribas. Plus, it makes sense in division. And I don't know who would win this fight. I'm not too high on Ribas yet. Maybe, I would guess Pauliana Viana would be able to maybe even get a finish against her. It's going to be interesting if these two were actually paired up. And a lot of these fights, like I said, I can see actually happening for all of them. I tried to make this card as realistic as possible. Amanda Ribas versus Pauliana Viana, I could see them actually making next in division. Neither of them are booked. Same with everybody else on the fight card. I like it. I like the fight. I like the matchup. I would go lean a little bit towards more Pauliana Viana, but let me know what you think down below. Moving on to the next fight on the prelims, Petr Yan versus Jonathan Martinez. Now, does this make sense in the rankings? No, Jonathan Martinez pretty much just broke in, had a great win over Said Nurmagomedov, and I honestly thought he lost that fight regardless. I can understand the decision a little bit, even though I thought it went against him. I'm really high on Jonathan Martinez, and I'm a huge Petr Yan fan. I'm actually becoming quite a big fan of both guys. I really, really like Jonathan Martinez. Been following him for a very long time. Petr Yan watched his whole career, but I'm not here to talk about what big fans I am of them, because honestly, I love both guys. I'm a huge, huge fan of them, but I'm going on about how much I like them again. This fight, the reason why I put this is because almost everybody at bantamweight is booked or just fought. Either that or, spoiler alert, there might be a couple others on the card here that we might get. Petr Yan has shown in the past with Sean O'Malley that he is not afraid to take on anybody in the division. He wants to fight. He wants to prove he's the best. Why not give him another contender, surging contender like Jonathan Martinez to show that Petr Yan is still at the very top of the division? And plus, we won't do that whole lightweight division thing where it's just the top five constantly fighting each other. Petr Yan, I really respect the fact that he took on Sean O'Malley the first time. When Sean O'Malley was at number 11 or something like that. Jonathan Martinez, around that area too. They're kind of on a collision course, which especially if Jonathan Martinez continues to win. And Petr Yan needs to fight a little bit down in the rankings right now because of his recent performances, especially his last fight, which is very, very heartbreaking. But still, I love this matchup, and I don't know who would win it. I'd lean towards Yan, but Jan's been a little bit disappointing in his last few outings. You know what I mean? Not disappointing, but I thought he would kill the guys, and he didn't. You know what I mean? But regardless, fantastic fight, Petr Yan versus Jonathan Martinez. Moving on to the next fight on the prelims, guys. I would be so hyped for this one. The rematch between Dominick Cruz and Cody Garbrandt. There are rumors right now that this fight is being made. And oh my God, I need to see these two trash talk again. Just let me promote it. I don't even need to see the fight. Just invite him to Fight Week. Invite him to the press conference. I need to see this. Cody Garbrandt got to win. Nothing too much else to say about that right now. He got to win. But Dominick Cruz, before he got finished by Vera, he was looking fantastic. Dominick Cruz is having not a second prime, but he is nowhere near being done, Dominick Cruz. I don't think he can compete with the top of the division anymore. But still, it's not like, oh my God, Dominick Cruz is washed. He's old now. He doesn't belong here. He's still a great fighter. And I believe that Dominick Cruz would beat Cody Garbrandt in the second fight. This is something that Dominick Cruz would be interested in. He's interested in fighting big fights, contenders, or a fight that he could get back. And Dominick Cruz would be interested in taking this fight, even though he's very picky. I like this fight against Cody Garbrandt. I think he would win. And give me the promotion for this fight. I would absolutely love to see it. Next fight on the card, we have Marlon Vera coming back because Marlon Vera seems to never take damage. If you looked at his face after the beatdown from Corey Sandhagen, looks like he's good to go today. You know what I mean? Anyways, who's Marlon Vera going to fight? Why not welcome to the division Deiveson Figueiredo? I almost put Deiveson Figueiredo against Petr Yan, but then I thought, these two have the styles where they will just go in and clash heads. It's going to be very interesting to see Deiveson Figueiredo, and I don't have a lot of confidence in him at 135 pounds, but I love the matchup between Marlon Vera and Deiveson Figueiredo. Deiveson Figueiredo, we know, of course, is 100% moving up to the 135-pound division, and I believe him coming off of a championship, I believe you should give him a top contender. I don't think that he should be fighting anyone somewhere around the number 15 range or even unranked. I believe he's done enough in his career to deserve a big fight. Why not Marlon Vera? Someone who's not booked, with most of the division already booked, most of the top contenders are booked. I think this makes a lot of sense, honestly, and I would love it if the UFC actually did this. So that's the fight that I made for the co-main event on the prelims. Marlon Vera versus Deiveson Figueiredo. This fight would be absolute fireworks. I would say, it depends how big Deiveson Figueiredo and how powerful his shots are in this division. There's a lot of questions. I certainly wouldn't bet on this fight, but I would lean towards Cheeto to win this one. Main event on the prelims, we have Paulo Costa versus Sean Strickland. The fight that the UFC is looking to make for Paulo Costa next. Either that or Khamzat Chimaev, but I would really like to see Paulo Costa versus Sean Strickland. This fight and the promotion for it would be absolutely fantastic. Paulo Costa, Sean Strickland, great personalities. Sitting at the press conference, I would absolutely love to see them both. Who would win this fight? That's tough. That's tough because Paulo Costa did not look good in his last outing. But Sean Strickland's always consistent. It's just Sean Strickland. Is he going to jab his face off? Who knows? I would lean towards Sean Strickland, but I'm kind of like 60-40 on that fight. Regardless, give me the promotion for this fight. This is the fight that needs to happen. I would be looking forward to this fight for months. The second they end up announcing this fight, I will be like, yes, 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 I need to watch this. What a great time. And I honestly, it was really hard. I wanted to put them on the main card, but I think I have the main card pretty solid for you guys. Let's move on to it. Opening up the main card, we have Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. And who is Stephen Wonderboy Thompson going to fight, you ask? Why not fight Nick Diaz? Stephen Thompson, very picky with his fights. At the end of his career, looked great in his last fight. Honestly, looked like a young Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Nick Diaz, we know, wants to take a fight in this year, wants to take a fight in the summer. Why not International Fight Week? He pretty much sold out the place against Robbie Lawler. People were like, Nick Diaz is back? And don't get me wrong, Nick looked horrible. And another thing I do need to mention, Nick, we're making Nick cut weight. We're making Nick cut weight, and he's going down to welterweight where he belongs. He does not belong as a fat middleweight, okay? Nick Diaz, I hope to God he would have a good performance. No matter what happens in this fight, though, it would be the ultimate nice guy versus the ultimate, he's not a bad guy, Nick Diaz, but it's like the the ultimate opposite of Stephen Thompson. You could say these two together would be great. Nick wouldn't care. The Diaz brothers just bring a kind of, what do you call it, like their own personality. They bring a different energy to Fight Week. The Nick Diaz Army fans would be out there cheering him on, and with Nick Diaz would come along Nate in the arena, so you would get some viral clips from there. This would sell so well. Nick Diaz's return. The problem is Nick Diaz is not Nick Diaz anymore, but we know he is coming back, so why not pair him up against another legend in Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, someone also towards the end of his career, but Stephen Thompson looked so good in his last fight. Regardless, I think it's a great fight to make. I almost put Nick Diaz against Rafael dos Anjos pretty much for the same reasons, but I thought it would be a more fun matchup with Wonderboy. Moving on along up the main card, Robert Whittaker versus Khamzat Chimaev. There's Khamzat. We almost put him against Paulo Costa, but I thought, why not? Why not? Whittaker is obviously not getting a title fight anytime soon. At the time of making this video, Israel Adesanya versus Alex Pereira hasn't happened yet. Who knows how long their layoff's going to be. Robert Whittaker is supposed to fight Paulo Costa at the beginning of the year. He's hungry to fight. So is Khamzat Chimaev. So he says, why not pair these two up together? The matchup would be perfect. It's the ultimate anti-wrestler versus ultimately the scariest contender in the division right now. Moving up to middleweight. I'm going to take that belt, but he's going to have to get through the Reaper. This would be fantastic. Khamzat Chimaev brings a lot of eyes, and so does Robert Whittaker. Everybody loves Robert Whittaker. Imagine all the Q&A sessions you could have at International Fight Week, all the fan things. So many people would want to see Robert Whittaker, and honestly, people would want to see Khamzat Chimaev too. This fight, I don't know how it would go. I would lean towards Robert Whittaker to win, but Khamzat looks like an animal, man. Robert Whittaker is one of those guys with that. He's that ultimate anti-wrestler. I would love to see this fight. I would love to see this matchup. Makes sense in the division. Winner gets a title shot. No questions asked. If Robert Whittaker wins this, he has done more than enough to deserve a third shot, even if Adesanya wins next weekend. Moving on to the next fight in the main card, Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje 2. We don't know how interested Dustin Poirier is in this fight. He's been a little bit touchy. He's like, oh, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But at least he's acknowledging the fight. Justin Gaethje wants to fight Dustin Poirier again. He wants to get that back. And their first fight, guys, if you haven't seen their first fight, stop what you're doing. Go watch that. I don't care if you click off my video. You will not be disappointed with their first fight. Classic Justin Gaethje, classic Dustin Poirier going head-to-head, swinging it out, and Dustin Poirier ultimately came out with the win. It was amazing. Justin Gaethje wants to get that back. He looked great in his last fight. Dustin Poirier has been on a roll himself. I would absolutely love to see these two go at it again. Could you give the winner a title shot, though? Very interesting. Very, very interesting. I don't know, but regardless, these two make for a recipe of success, and no matter what happens, this will be fight of the night. Out of all of the fights on this card, this is guaranteed fight of the night. This is guaranteed everybody watching at home screaming. This is guaranteed the talk of the entire card. No matter what happens in this fight, no matter who wins, you know everybody's going to be eyes glued. We're down to the last three, guys, and what is an International Fight Week card without three title fights? So you know two of them already. We're not going to spend too much time on it. Alexander Volkanovski versus Yair Rodriguez. It's the third fight before, so we know one. We know this one. What's the other one that they could put on? Anyways, Alexander Volkanovski defending his featherweight title, doing the right thing, which is really awesome of him as a champion. He should be the 155-pound champion too, defending one of his belts. By Yair Rodriguez, if there's anybody who beat Alexander Volkanovski, it might be this guy. I think he's going to get steamrolled. But still, you know what? Yair Rodriguez has a chance. You never know. Alexander Volkanovski could be due for an upset sooner or later, but he's looked too good. He's looked too good against Islam Makhachev. I almost forgot his name. Excuse me. I don't mean to be disrespectful there. Amazing fight. Volk is looking great, and I think he'll steamroll Yair Rodriguez, to be honest with you. But still, Volkanovski becoming such a star overseas, all over the world too, and Yair Rodriguez, a huge star in Mexico. Great fight, great title fight, well-deserving fight for Yair, and it's awesome that Volkanovski is already defending his featherweight strap. Moving on to the co-main event of the evening. Could you guess what the title fight was? It is Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington. We know this fight is on the horizon, and Leon Edwards said he's not fighting, so who knows what's going to happen with that. Let's hope for the best, but still. Colby Covington was talking about International Fight Week, and he will fight on the prelims if that's what it takes to fight Leon Edwards for the belt. I have a funny feeling that they're actually going to put this on the card, but I don't know for sure. Regardless, we have seen many, many big UFC cards with 3 title fights, so why not throw Leon Edwards and Colby Covington there? Colby Covington becoming such a star. He's becoming a huge star, whether you hate him or not. You cannot deny the attention he would bring to this card. The trash talk will be fantastic. Does Colby Covington deserve the fight? Absolutely not, but this is the fight that's happening, and we know it's happening. This will be a fun fight and a great matchup. I don't know who would win this fight. I would lean towards Leon Edwards, but it's like 55-45, man. That would be like you have a gun to my head. I go, okay, Leon Edwards. But it's a great fight. Great fight. And moving on to the main event, you guys already know what's happening. It is Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic. How could you not have the heavyweight title? And to explain the other placements, it's the biggest weight or the heaviest weight first, and then so on, then so forth. That's why Alexander Volkanovski is number 3, although you could put him as the co-main event. Jon Jones, Stipe Miocic. It's going to be a fun fight. It's going to be fun to see Stipe return, but he's just a fireman. And not to say he's just a fireman. You get the point. He's probably not training nearly as much. He looks way too old. He hasn't looked good in his last fight. Jon Jones just destroyed Cyril Gane. He looked like a monster at heavyweight. Jon Jones is going to walk through Stipe Miocic. However, you cannot have the main event not be a heavyweight title fight, especially if it's been announced. Like, I know it hasn't officially been announced, but this is the fight they're working towards. Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic to headline the International Fight Week card. So that is the entire lineup of the card, but there's always something that goes wrong. We're going into this, guys. We're going into this, okay? So there are backups for this fight, okay? And I have one for each division. In case something goes wrong, which it's bound to happen. You know what I mean? I'm prepared. I'm prepared as the official card builder of the UFC, okay? Obvious backup, Tai Tuivasa, fan favorite. And I understand even if, you know what I mean, like he doesn't necessarily deserve a title fight, but still, he'll be down for it and he'll have no problem stepping in. He'll have no problems fighting Jon Jones or Stipe Miocic. Roman Dolidze, take care of the middleweight division. Any of those fights fell out, he'll step in. He's looked great. Solid contender. Rafael dos Anjos. I wanted to put against Nick Diaz, but we know Rafael dos Anjos, no matter what, he'll be happy to step in and fight anybody. Mateusz Gamrot will take care of the lightweight division if somebody happens to pull out. Chan Sung Jung, a huge star, and I almost put him on the card, but I couldn't necessarily find a spot for him, so why not have him as a backup? Also with Umar Nurmagomedov, surging contender, could take care of the bantamweight division, and Silviana Gomez Girares, and I apologize, I might be pronouncing that wrong, some of these names I don't get proper, but she could take care of any one of the women's divisions, and they would all, of course, be invited to the press conference, the events. People would love to see all of these fighters. I know if I was going, I'd love to meet Rafael dos Anjos, take a picture with him or something, you know what I mean? Watch him work out. It'd be an absolute pleasure. So the backup fighters, they are very, very important. However, this is the biggest thing that I wanted to talk about, and this is something that I really took into consideration when building the card. The social media presence that these fighters will put on, and the press conference. You will need to have a press conference. I was talking about this with one of my friends, like, what if you had a press conference? I know it's unreasonable, but every day for International Fight Week, you had a press conference. Imagine all of these guys. Excuse me, I'm not going to be looking at the camera. I'm going to be looking at my fight card, okay? You'll have Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic. You'll have Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington. Trash talk in general. And Colby Covington himself, okay? Let's just talk about Colby Covington for a second. He'd be trash-talking Jon Jones. He'd be trash-talking Leon Edwards. He'd be trash-talking Dustin Poirier. He'd probably be trash-talking Chimaev. Maybe Robert Whittaker. He'd be talking trash to Nick Diaz for sure because he's been talking about Nate not having any brain cells or anything. Same with Justin Gaethje. Would he talk trash to Costa and Strickland? I don't know. I feel like he'd bounce off well as Strickland. They could start making fun of some people. Anyways, Colby would be making fun of this entire card. Polyana Viana. He called her like a 6 or something. Kevin Lee. They know they're on a collision course. Kevin Lee would jump on that opportunity to start talking trash with Colby Covington. It would be fantastic. Who else on this card? Dustin Poirier. I feel like he could have beef with pretty much anybody. It's just you have to get on Dustin Poirier's nerves. But another thing that I want to talk about, oh my God, Paulo Costa and Sean Strickland. Oh my God, I don't know what that would happen there, but Sean Strickland, and I really, really wanted Israel Adesanya in this card, but he's booked. Sean Strickland and Israel Adesanya trash talking each other were some of the funniest press conference moments I have seen in a very long time. But Sean, he was just You could put him in a press conference alone. He could take care of it. You know what I mean? He'd be great. He'd be absolutely fantastic. On top of that, you would have all of the legends. You'd have like the Jim Millers, the Joe Lozon. So you wouldn't just have trash talk. You could have some awesome conversation. And I need to see Dominic Cruz and Cody Garbrandt just talk to each other. Or more so, Dominic Cruz making fun of Cody Garbrandt. That was some of the funniest trash talk ever. This press conference has so much potential. And then you would have Nick Diaz just sitting there, like, doing his, like, he'd have the microphone just, like, holding onto it and just looking like this. Just looking like this. Hey, Nick, are you excited to fight? Yeah? Yeah? Nick, what do you think about Stephen Thompson's fight style? I like it. And then, for some reason, that would get the whole Nick Diaz army going crazy. That make him go crazy. Volkanovski's a star. Jon Jones is a star. You have so many stars in here. Everybody loves Robert Whittaker. Everybody loves Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Paulo Costa and Sean Strickland would sell this thing like crazy. The fights that are made here are perfect. Nate Landwehr is really getting some steam, which I really, really like. And this whole card that I have built here just has a recipe for success. I wanted to make this fight card something special. I wanted to make it as special as possible while still being realistic, because I didn't want to throw like Conor McGregor on there, because Conor McGregor is not fighting until like October. You know what I mean? This is something that the UFC could actually do. And why not make it a 6 fights on each little piece of the card? I think that would improve it so much, and have all of these backup fighters in place. This is the card that I would build for the most success, not only for International Fight Week, but everything surrounding it. You want the fan events, the press conference, the media, the social media. The fighters will promote it themselves, and it is going to succeed no matter what. This is impossible for a card to sit there and you go, wow, that was a little bit disappointing. Not this one. That could never happen. That's actually impossible. And I would love it if we got anything relatively close to this. This is the perfect International Fight Week card, and so I'll leave it up to you guys. Let me know what you think about every single fight down below. And what do you think? You know what? Why not? Who would win? Or what would you replace any matchups with? And who do you think would win each matchup? Let me know what you guys think. And again, I just did this for fun, so obviously it's not going to happen. Don't take the video the wrong way. I probably talked a lot in this video, so thank you so much for watching. On the screen right now, for the Adesanya card, I have the full breakdown and prediction for it, and I have another fantastic MMA video if you would like to check it out. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I will see you in the next video. Take care.